Welcome to the REI Rookies Podcast, the Real Estate Investing Rookies Podcast, episode number 9, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Josh Koth, and Jack Haas is out today, most likely binge-watching Doctor Who on Netflix. The mission of this podcast is for us to repeat what we're learning to you guys. It really helps the information stick in our feeble rookie brains that much more. And we really believe a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing. With that in mind, today we have a special guest named Lee Roggenkamp, and Lee's a real estate agent, works for Keller Williams here in Fargo, North Dakota. And he was the guy that showed up at my first house that I wanted to buy as an investment. And we've done every deal since then with him as well. So he's written a lot of offers on our behalf, and now working with Jack on me and Jack's behalf. And we just had a long, great history. Well, long, exactly about a year to 14 months history with Lee. So welcome to the podcast, Lee.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. And yeah, that was a good investment real estate class too that I met you at also.
Oh, yes. Forgot about that. Yeah, actually, I'd really like to get those guys on a future episode as well, because that was really what kind of got me down the path of real estate investing. A couple investors that Lee knows held a little kind of how-to class in their house over Christmas about 14, 15 months ago. And they brought Lee in to talk about working with an agent and how to use the MLS and finding properties. And just so happens when I wanted to look at a property, I think it was like 2 days later, Lee was the one that showed up. It was kind of serendipitous. You know, I didn't even necessarily, I forgot I even had his number, didn't save his card or anything. But when I called off of, I think it was even Zillow or something, just got the random agent number, called one of his team members, Jason, and that Lee was the guy they sent. And they said, hey, you were just talking at a class I was at. So it was kind of serendipitous how that worked out.
It was good luck.
Yeah, exactly. And, you can kind of believe whether things happen for a reason or not. But I think as long as you're, ready to, when you meet somebody and you're ready to work together and that opportunity presents itself, then you just run with it and you're ready to grab it. And that's kind of what happened. So
it was fate for us to meet, Josh.
Just
say it.
Exactly. It was fate. All right. So basically, when we have guests on the podcast, this is our first guest, so he's blazing a trail right now, but we're going to kind of ask some questions of every guest just to kind of get a baseline and see what they do and see what's happening and how they relate to real estate and investing. And then we'll ask some specific questions about what their specific occupation is. And Lee's a real estate agent and also an investor as well. So he's really uniquely qualified to kind of give his perspective on this. So let's get right into it. What do you say, Lee?
I appreciate it.
All right. So give us your elevator speech. What do you do? And give us a little overview.
Yes. And real quick, a little bit about me too. Married for 9 years, 4 kids in 5 years we had. 3, they are 3, 5, 7, and 8. And my wife is so much better looking than me. When we go to the grocery store, the cashier puts that little thing in between our groceries. But no, thanks for the intro. I am been in real estate I've been buying real estate for 18 years. Since 99, and about my first one was a mobile home, but we can get into that in a bit. But right now I'm doing residential and commercial, both commercial just for the last 2 years, but 11 years in residential. But I help between 80 and 100 buyers per year purchase or sell a home.
Awesome.
And so yeah, that's what I do now.
That's awesome. So you were a buyer of real estate even before you were an agent, right? Before you got your license?
Correct.
You said you bought, the first thing was a mobile home?
Yeah.
How did you stumble into that? Actually, before even that, what was it for you to live in, or did you buy it as an investment?
I bought it for me to live in for a little while when I moved back from the cities right out of high school. And my brother owned it, and it was I just assumed his loan through Green Tree, and it was $178 a month, and I moved to that was principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and specials all together.
Yep.
And I moved to Fargo, and I put the ad in the paper, and my dad showed it for me, and it was the first gal that came there for $425 a month, and so I was making a couple hundred a month on it, and thinking, geez, this is like shooting fish in a barrel, so why don't I buy 60 more of them? And here we all are.
Yeah. So did you have any interest in real estate prior to owning the mobile home, or was it just born out of necessity? Hey, I'm moving out of this place. Why not make some money on it? You kind of fell into it, or did you know that real estate was something that interested you prior to that?
It was interesting because it's unique and not everyone does it. So I was a car salesman for a while too, 7 years, and I met a real estate agent who was a very nice person, and he was real flexible on his time, and he was always, happy-go-lucky, and he had told me about a few rentals that he owned, and I had also a couple great aunts and uncles that Louisiana and that had done really well, and so it was always kind of like, that person that you look up to, and so I wanted to be them.
That's awesome, because I tell the same story with my uncle, who still helps us now with kind of being our general contractor, but he always had some apartments. He called them the apartments, up by a local college here in town. And it was great to have that as a model, as a role model, because I knew that it was possible. And I think that's so crucial when you're getting started out, or before you even start out. Seeing somebody else already doing it just makes you believe, hey, this is possible. And like you said, you see them doing well, you see them profiting, and you see that, hey, this is something I could get into as well, rather than just taking the same path that everyone else might do, just getting a job and working 50 years and hoping to save enough for retirement. Hey, why not generate some passive income in the meantime, right?
Well, there's so many naysayers out there too, and it's hard to keep focused on it, what could happen. So, the 90% of people that give up when the going gets tough work for the 10% that don't. And so you would know that.
Exactly.
Still a lot of mindset books, but
yeah, you mentioned that before we got started recording here about, how crucial the mindset is. And I'm sure you've seen Gary Keller's book, right? Being a Keller Williams agent, the millionaire real estate investor, right? The whole first part of the book is about think like a millionaire, right? And how do you get into that mindset where, hey, I'm going to go off the beaten path here and do what I really think is going to be productive.
Also, just to surround yourself with other like-minded people that have done it. I've taken, a few different millionaire investors out for lunch and just ask them, their time is valuable, and I want to respect that. So just getting in front of a few people who have done what you want to achieve, so all of the naysayers that are saying no, you can't. You gotta not talk to them when you're looking to buy your next one.
Yeah, exactly. That's so crucial, because if you talk to 10 people, hey, I'm thinking about investing in real estate, 9 of them are going to say, oh, that's a horrible idea. What about a crash? What about this? What about that? Like you said, all the things that could happen. And then if you surround yourself with the one, if you hang out with the one that says, no, that's a great idea, and you find 5 others like it, you're that much more likely to believe it can be done. And I think real estate investors and entrepreneurs in general, they have the mindset of, rather than, why can't this be done? They think, well, instead of saying that can't be done or that's not possible, they say, how can I do it? How could I figure that out? And that's such an important mindset switch to happen in your brain, right?
Yeah, that's the difference between the two questions, can I and how can I? Can I poses limiting beliefs, and the other one doesn't.
Exactly right. So you took some people out to lunch. You said you talked to some mentors early on. Do you remember anything specific that really stuck with you before you got kind of started on your journey of real estate, investing and being an agent, that really sunk in?
Work harder on yourself than you do on your job, and mindset is key. So yes, you have to be a sponge for knowledge for how to do everything in the whole buying process. But you still need to, if you're happy at home and you're and all of that, then you can move forward.
Yeah. So, and just so the audience knows, Lee has a huge Audible library. He's always talking about new books, once he's reading. And so I think he lives that it's important to work on yourself more so than your job. And I think that really stuck with him as well. So that's great advice.
A class that I teach too is the 6 personal perspectives, and the 6 points there. The last one is accountability, but a lot of them focus on mindset too. So
mindset, and you'll find this is a theme throughout all, areas of self-improvement and self-help and all the, Tony Robbins type of stuff. The mindset is such a key part of all of that. I think it's not industry specific. I mean, it applies to all industries, all entrepreneurs, but basically, going back to the book, Think and Grow Rich, even, written in the 20s and 30s. I mean, that whole basis of that book is that you have to believe it's possible. And even in the face of many negative, obstructions, you're still going to surge forward and just ignore all those and just have the persistence and grit to get it done. And, that's all begins with thinking you can do it and having that mindset. So if you were going to go back in time and, tell little young Lee, a ripe old age of 20 or wherever you were when you bought your first mobile home and you were going down your path of becoming an investor, what would you tell yourself if you could?
Well, we already touched on, surrounding yourself with like-minded people too. I would have done that a lot earlier. And cash is king. And, there's a lot of financial classes and things out there, like Dave Ramsey, and he tells you to put a certain percentage away of your income, and to look at a great big picture. I mean, that's to do with anything to do with health or wellness or finances or anything, to put a certain amount away. That's just smart business. And then, because your first deal, you're going to need 20 to 30% down anyways. And then you can start being a little more, you can think outside the box. There's a few of the hungry investors or the hungry lenders that I work with, they can help you, if you have another property that's paid for, or you have some equity in it, you can use that for down payment. So just back to your question, is I would have saved more capital so that you can jump on more, opportunities when they do arise.
Yep. And one crucial thing, and, we're going through being just over a year into it, like you said, cash is king, and you need that capital to do deals. So you need to be saving that or have access to it, or get creative, like you said, and find ways to access it. If you have it in equity form or from maybe someone wants to lend you some money, or, there's all kinds of ways to get capital. But yeah, striking that balance between how leveraged you are, because you want to use leverage, right? You want to maximize your leverage to a point, but not to the point where, it's a house of cards that could come toppling down. Because the one thing that's guaranteed to happen is stuff's going to break. Stuff's going to need to be fixed, repaired. You're going to do evictions, all these types of things. You can't plan, for the rosiest optimistic forecast. You hope that's going to go that way, but you have to plan for every eventuality, right?
I do have 2 different types of investors that I've worked with. A couple of the people that we want to be. Len and Jim, I've taken out to lunch, but they have 2 different ways of doing their investing too, rather than, so one is very conservative and puts everything on a 10-year note or less, and the other one does a 30-year amortization. You can only do that for a few in the secondary market, but and they have 2 totally different ways of investing. The one, he goes for appreciation, and the other one goes, so it's all your goals and what you want to do. You can buy houses that have a higher, income per month or a higher cash flow, but they sometimes are a little weird. Otherwise, you can go for different houses. I paid $12,000 for a foreclosure in Halstead, Minnesota. and I got $625 rent out of it. So that's the two different types. So, so that one,
that's a cash flow property right there.
Yeah,
you're not banking on appreciation on that one.
And at one time 3 years ago, I sold it on contract for deed and sold it for $40,000. And they gave me a $12,000 down payment, and then if foreclosed, or they came back and I took the property back, or they gave it back willingly. But so that's the one.
So just out of curiosity, when you said the two different investors, one wanted a short-term note, was he the one that bought for appreciation or bought for cash flow? Like cash flow? Okay, and then the longer term, he wants a lower payment and he's banking on appreciation to make his money over the long term.
Yep, and that you have to be a little cautious too, because if you have a 30-year term or a longest term that you can, and you're getting more cash, you got to make sure that you're not out buying a new boat and a way too big a house and all that stuff, because that's one of the red flags or the landmines for new investors is to watch out for that.
Yep.
You're not buying your first 10 and putting them on longer term and just taking all the cash, and then all of a sudden 5 things go wrong in 1 year, and then all of a sudden you're losing everything. So you got to. That's another thing about putting money away. But the opposite side of that, a property that I just sold on Friday, I'm 1031 exchanging into a commercial building, my first one. Mm-hmm. And that house that I sold on Jefferson Street was a house that my wife and I lived in for maybe a year before we got our first new build. But the Jefferson Street house, that one appreciates 3 to 5% per year. So that's another thing about investments, that depending on if you want to go for one that they spend a little more money on, and then all of a sudden 10 years later, 5 years later, so we 1031 $50,000 into we're going to put it in a new building, and we ended up putting a bunch of them on the market when I had this opportunity. And that's one more thing about I put all of my rentals on short-term notes so that I can gain equity faster.
Right.
I've always had a good job, so that in case something goes wrong and I have a little bit extra capital, just in case. So that's the other way to look at it.
Yep, and everybody has to do what's right for their situation. Like you said, you still have income from being a real estate agent, so that's your primary source of income. So you have some more flexibility with cash flow to redirect or to rededicate it towards other things on the investing side. And there's another couple investors that we know in town here that do the same thing. They make really good money at their day jobs, so they can, it gives you definitely some more flexibility. But let's say, if you're investing, you're a real estate investor full time, then you probably have to be a little more cautious, a little more careful about that cash flow and making sure that that cash is available for when things go wrong. And I won't say if, because there's no if, it's just a matter of when. And that's another mindset shift is, that's not being a cynic or being a negative Nelly. I mean, things wear out in houses. That's just how it goes. So as long as you plan for that and set aside a percentage of your cash flow to take care of those issues, then you're mitigating that risk, and then it's not a risk anymore. It's just, okay, it's something that we expect. We know a water heater's going to die on us, and it's going to be a few $100s, and a furnace is going to die, and that's going to be this many thousand. And, once you allocate money for those costs, then it's not a tragedy. It's not a big panic mode. It's just, just write a check for that because, as expected, this item failed, and we planned for that, so we have the cash, right?
Yeah, and to be able to use different vendors that have licenses, me being a licensed realtor, I'm held to a higher standard. I have something to lose if I say something wrong, and I'm a sponge for knowledge. I'm always out there trying to find the latest and greatest. And also, one of the biggest things I've ever done was to take the leap to transition from me managing my own properties into a property manager, so they can, find the landmines too. And if there's something that you should know, they'll help you with it. But
right.
Lori's great. I mean, she took the bull by the horns, and she's doing a great job. So just to have some other people in your life that are doing that. Same with in real estate. I hired a guy that's doing my showings for me too, and that was another that'll help me accelerate the rest of business. But one of the bold laws here that you had mentioned earlier, the purpose of business is to fund a perfect life.
Yep, exactly. And that goes back to the mindset issue again. People don't realize how much control they have over where they end up. You have total control over it, honestly. If you're willing to put the work in and figure out the steps to get there, you can control how much money you're making, where you live, who you hang out with, all those things. I mean, they're all under your control. So, I wish people would kind of realize that. And, we've talked about in earlier episodes about the whole the victim mentality a lot of people have in society, and life is happening to them rather than them exerting control over where they are in life. And, I think entrepreneurs typically have the mindset of, I'm going to take control. I'm going to decide where I end up. Not be at the mercy of a boss necessarily. Because even as a real estate agent, I mean, you're kind of walking that line. It's kind of a nice best of both worlds where you technically you work for a company, but you have a lot of freedom. You have a lot of, choice in how you spend your time day to day, right?
Exactly. And that was the next one there. The thing I love most about real estate is the flexibility. And I'm on a team where I can do what I do best and delegate the rest. So Trevor does my showings for me, and he's great. And that's, that fits exactly where he wants to go in life too. Is he wants to work for someone for now, and I guess in the future. Trevor,
and he likes getting out of the office, and we go to tons of showings. Trevor takes us on lots of showings. So
yep. And
that's awesome.
When you say you control your own destiny, thing there too, the difference between even a step back on the 6 personal perspectives. So the difference, one is habits. Success versus the opposite is, everything is made up of tiny little habits. So the difference between success and failure is your tiny little habits that you're doing every day. And one, you're either going veering a little bit towards failure or a little bit towards success. And, another side of that is skill versus will. So we all have things, the audible books and that we can listen to, and congratulations for trying to better yourself every day. And but everyone has that, the skill. You can learn it. There wouldn't be overweight people or alcoholics and ever be if it was
the knowledge is out there.
Yeah. So the will, that's the second part of it. You have to be able to implement it. Once you have the skill, you can control your own life.
And I often equate this when I'm using an analogy about this topic. It's like weight loss, right? I mean, everyone knows what they should be eating. I mean, there's no knowledge gap there. Everyone knows what's healthy food, right? Can you control the cravings? Can you decide what's going in your mouth? That's the crucial difference between people that actually, do lose weight and the ones that don't. And again, it's the victim mentality. Are you acting like life is happening to you? I mean, nobody's shoving a couple pizzas in your mouth, right? I mean, you're putting that in there, so it's your choice, and you do have control over what you're eating. So it's really similar, in your career, just like that, right?
Same with, we're starting to have some money pile up in a savings account because we read a book and we're putting away 10%, and all of a sudden you see that a little bit of a nest egg coming, and that's when it's way too easy to just go spend it. That's where just like eating habits, all those habits. So you have to surround yourself with like-minded people and just be learning based. And just keep something in front of you. I'm on the treadmill at 4:45 every morning, listening to something. Grant Cardone, and that's the next question there too.
That's awesome.
Grant Cardone, be obsessed or be average.
Yep,
you have to listen to that. He's just a crazy man, and not every.
Is that a book?
Yeah, it's
audio book.
Yeah, Audible or hard copy, either one. But I mean, he is crazy, man, and you're not, just like every morning. Also at 8:30, we get all of our realtors together and we have a little powwow or a little mindset inspirational meeting, and we go over some scripts sometimes and that. But you're not going to walk out every single one of those meetings going, "Wow, that changed my life. That was crazy." But it's just to show up every morning and to be engaged, and it gets you going in the right direction. You have like-minded people around. All that, so you just gotta keep with it.
Exactly right. Yep, those everyday repetition of those consistent habits is what makes change over time, right?
We're masters of repetitious boredom.
Exactly. And I know as an agent, you have a time of day where all you do is just reach out and make contact with either people that have, I don't know, how do you guys compile your list? Is it people that sign into the website or just have reached out to you personally? Like, how do you build your list? I know you try to talk to 30 people a day, right?
The first 5 years of business, I had to talk to a lot of people that I didn't know, but now it's more repeats and referrals that I get to talk to 9:30 to 11:30 every day.
Every day. And that's, 2 hours, that's 10 hours a week that all you're doing is just reaching out. And I can tell being on the receiving end of that, it was funny because after I had known you for about a month, I got a call and we had already closed on a house and you were just like, it's Lee, just checking in, seeing if you need anything, seeing how you're doing. I'm like, that's weird. Why is he calling me? It's like, we already did a deal. We closed on a house. And then it was kind of genius because it really keeps you top of mind. And I had already planned to call you for my next deal anyways, but if I hadn't, it just gives you that much more of an edge over the person that doesn't call. Just that one more touch point.
There was like, and 78% of all statistics are made up, right? So we'll just say 78% of past people that bought a house would have bought from their current or their past agent, but they just didn't know their name. They didn't know how to get a hold of them. So
exactly.
Shame on them for not keeping in touch.
Yes, the follow-up is so crucial. And as part of one of those 78% made up statistics, I saw somewhere that most deals are closed after like the 8th or 9th follow-up. And most salespeople, like 90% of salespeople will only go to maybe the first, ask for the sale one time and then someone says no and then you're just done, right? But it's the people that are willing to follow up 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Those are the ones that actually close deals. So that's so hard to implement. You're having to call people, 2 hours a day, every day for, I bet, months sometimes before, and maybe years sometimes before they finally go, all right, Lee, time to do another deal. Because people investors obviously buy real estate fairly often, but people that are looking to buy a house, especially a bigger house where you can make your real sizable commissions, they're only doing that every few years.
You got to make peace with the boredom of mastery. Just keep calling, calling and calling it. And when I first started selling cars, I was fresh off the farm. I was a kind of a goofy farm kid and still am. But I had a good manager that finally told me, what you need to do is have something of value for every phone call. Just know that, in a weak moment, that person that's buying whatever it is, if it's a car or real estate or whatever, they could get stuck with a bad agent or a bad person. So in my heart, I knew that, since I can help them, I can get them exactly what they want and I can be their Tylenol, and reduce headache. Mm-hmm. But, finding them whatever it is, if it's a house. So just to have something of value, like everything that's fresh on the market, the price reductions, to know that at 4 1/8% interest rate right now on a 30-year loan, every 100,000 borrowed is $485 a month, and you just got to add, if it's new construction, $500 a month, and for extras, the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and specials is $500 extra, but it's only $300 on a pre-existing home, and just to have something of value and be a sponge for it. I don't know hardly anything about, how thick walls are, our value of the windows and all the stuff that engineers love to know, but I know I am a master of the process, and so when it comes to real estate, just from A to Z, it gets a lot easier after 11 years.
Yep, and that's really what you do. Your job is to shepherd people through that process all the way through closing and beyond, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, speaking as obviously we've done a ton of deals together now, but I remember back to when I bought my first house before I even met you, but just to live in. It's such a huge deal, and you're so freaked out by the process. You don't want anything to go wrong, and the agent is so crucial in just making things, hey, everything's going to be all right. Have you ever had buyers panic on you when things look like they're about to fall apart, a closing is in jeopardy? have people crying, panicking, yelling at you? Have you had that happen?
Well, to switch gears a little bit, yes. And the whole reason for a good or a buyer consult up front. So when someone calls in and they register on the website or whatever, and I get in front of them, I've been through the process so many times that I have a slideshow or a PowerPoint up that I go through, and it goes through every single little thing that could come up, whether it be, don't mistake excitement for fear, and here's what the rates do, and just to let them know that I have a license to lose if anything goes wrong, but I'm here on your side. I'm a buyer's agent, so I protect you in every little addendum and contingency and all that I put in the deal, so you're protected. And so you just have prove that you're competent. And
have you found that really minimizes the freakouts, because you're kind of setting those expectations? So some issues that may have freaked them out if you hadn't given them that presentation, now it doesn't. It kind of calms them down a little bit up front.
And there's where the main thing is communication.
Yep.
So isn't it a lot easier to, even take a step back on my family? It's a lot easier to have a crucial conversation or heart to heart with them when they know you're coming from a good spot and you deserve to say it. I'm a powerful agent because I ask powerful questions. And so when I go through the process, then when you get to the part in the inspection where something isn't working or this or that, it's a lot easier to overcome an objection or whatever because of that. And so just over communicating saves a lot of time and headache.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because the problem's not going to go away. So you're better off to deal with it, talk about it openly, over communicate like you said, rather than just hope that everything works out and cross your fingers, right? That's not a good strategy when it comes to buying a house.
Right.
So why don't you think more real estate agents invest in properties themselves? I've always been surprised by that. Like when I've talked to, as a day job, I have a photography studio. I do lots of headshots for realtors too. And I always chat them up a little bit. And I'm always surprised that more don't realize the power of real estate as an investment and why they don't, take advantage of it. Why would you think that's the case?
They get in their own way. That's the short answer. And the next question too, it goes hand in hand with it. The biggest objections or the biggest things that would kill a deal and why agents don't invest themselves is because their biggest hurdle is either their spouse or the bank.
Yes. Exactly.
So if you got to have your spouse on board, and if you're listening and you want to and you don't think your spouse is, just get them in front of me. Like let's just go have a walk through in a house, and it's just this other side hears that you're competent, and I'm like I say, master of the process. But when I walk through a house, and especially in the Fargo-Moorhead area or an outlying area, I know what the rent ceiling is. I know if it's going to appreciate or not. If it's in a tiny little ugly town, it's not going to appreciate. If it's in Fargo-Moorhead, it's going to be 3 to 5% unless it's a really weird property. But just to walk through it with the spouse and just spew confidence on them, that's and it's not on purpose. It's not cheesy. It's not anything. It's just that's what happens. And I'm so obviously sold on it because I've been buying rentals here for a long time too. So.
Yep, awesome. So what would you say are the problems that if a deal is going to fall apart, either as an investor or somebody to live in the house, what problems are most likely to kill a deal?
Well, either we find out through an inspection that it doesn't pass rental registration, and the other two biggest things are the bank saying no or your spouse saying no.
Now, as far as inspection issues, and see, here's where it gets. There's a kind of a sweet spot, right? Because you want the property to probably be a little bit distressed, right? Because otherwise you're dealing with, competing against a lot of other people that want it and possibly to live in as well. But you don't want it to be so distressed that, like you said, you can't get it up to a point where people can live in it or it will pass an inspection, right?
Well, you got to do what you know well, do what you have studied. So if you're looking for distressed properties, that's one thing. But if they're distressed, it might be for a reason. And on the flip side, if you've the ones that go really fast, first day on the market, that are priced right, and so it's price and condition, so that they might appreciate even more than the ones that are either have some issues or have been on the market for a while. So it kind of depends on what gear you want to be in.
Right. Yep, exactly. Yeah, there's a pig for every barn, right? So what do you think most investors trip on? What happens?
It's exactly what we've been talking about, mindset, just hearing no. I mean, it's a funny analogy of like dating.
Yep.
You're going to hear no a few times, especially if you're setting your sights high. But most investors, and that's why it is nice having licensed people that work with you for inspections. And I've got my tight knit group of the lenders and the appraisers and vendors that work with me on insurance and all that stuff. So it's kind of nice having professionals in there too, so that when I send an investor, and I coach plenty, right now we've got over 20 investors that work with me. And there's room for plenty more because there's a lot of inventory out there, but just hearing no is the biggest thing. But I even say, Josh, if you're going to so-and-so for lending, if they don't tell you exactly what you want to hear, then come back to me. I've got someone else that can, because it's not always about a personality or things. It's about what if their bank is hungry or not at the time. Also,
I mean, and being able to help solve those problems, that's so crucial. I mean, we went through that exact same thing. You recommended some various vendors for Jack and I as well, and we've definitely always give them the shot, and or we'll say, God, this basement's a little weird. Do you know anybody that could brace this or somebody? It's like just having those kind of on the tip of your tongue and ready to hand out numbers. That can smooth the deal over, right? You can say, hey, I know a guy that'll fix that. It'll be about, $5,000 or something. And that way the investor or even owner occupant can see a path through, right? They can see, well, we can actually fix this and just, it's just a cost, right?
Exactly. And just, you got to know that you can get past it too. Not everything is a deal breaker. It's kind of your risk tolerance of what you want to take on. And that's the difference between the houses that have something wrong with them and the houses that don't. So if you're depending on your personality, and we find out real fast in a showing whether or not you want something that's distressed or not.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And then you got to be able to tailor what properties you're showing, to fit that risk tolerance profile, right? Excellent. So what's a good tip you have about negotiating with sellers? You're a buyer's agent, so you represent us when we're trying to purchase properties, either as investments, or you also help find my house I live in now as well, and you've helped many people find houses to live in and as investors. So what's your favorite tip about negotiating with sellers?
Short answer, don't be emotionally attached to the outcome.
Yes.
So that's my tip for buyers, but yeah, for sellers, that's another reason why having a realtor that has a good relationship with everyone. So my relationship I lean on a lot. When a selling agent sees my phone number come across, I assume that they're thinking happy, positive thoughts, because most of my buyers, all of my buyers are well educated. They're pre-approved. We've been through that buyer consult, so they know the process well. We're not going to get hung up on the small things. So just having a good relationship with all of my vendors, like you said, the basement guy. I've got 2 basement guys and 10 electricians, and any vendor that you would need. Me and my group of people have plenty of contacts and a good relationship with them, so they can move fast.
Awesome. So how about when investors reach out to you? I'm sure you've seen, some behaviors you didn't necessarily love, but what's the best way, or what advice can you give to an investor about working with a real estate agent?
It's nice if they're investors themselves, because they've been through everything. That's about the best example I can give, because I did my own property management for 10 or 11 years.
Right.
And so I've been through all of the it's the lies that you get, or it's not on purpose. they just life happens and tenants can't make their rents. And so I've heard just about everything in the book. And so it's easier for me to coach my property manager when I did hand it off to her. I can, set expectations and I've been through it too. But yeah, just to have someone who's been through that themselves is huge.
Awesome. So tell our listeners what's if they want to invest and purchase some properties up here in the upper Midwest, Fargo, North Dakota area. What's the best way to reach out to you?
Call or text 701-200-0909. That's 701-200-0909.
Awesome. And Lee's a great resource of information. He's always willing to talk to people about anything. He really does give a lot of knowledge away. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions about investing and if you'd like to look at some properties here in the Fargo-Moorhead area or surrounding areas. So that kind of wraps it up today. So many thanks to Lee for coming in and being our first guest on the REI Rookies Podcast. Did you have a good time?
I did. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you having me.
Hey, let's go out and do another deal. What do you say?
Deal.
If you have a question, feel free to reach out to us via email, info@reirookies.com. Hit us up on Twitter. Our handle is @REIRookies. Check us out on Facebook. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes. It really helps others find the podcast. All right, remember, everybody, to get off the bench and get into the game. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right. Me.